and gentlemen, thank you. Friends and family and paddlers and athletes, on behalf of the Cole family, Granny Wendy, Barbara and Rory, but most importantly, on behalf of Alexa, who I call Tombi, Jared, who I call Cappy, and Blake, who we all call Spuddy. A very warm welcome to all of you here today to celebrate the life of an icon and a legend. A man who had a huge presence about him. A man who was a respected coach. A man who was a fierce competitor and talented athlete. A man who was a friend to all of us. A man who has certainly left a legacy. But most importantly, a man who is a family man, who loved his wife and children so deeply and so passionately. Please allow me to introduce myself. Some of you will know me, most of you won't. My name is Tex Turton. I come from the beautiful village of Underberg in the Drakensberg Mountains. So how did I and my family get so involved with Pete and Alexa, and how did we build this beautiful relationship and incredible friendship that we have? Well, it was about 25 years ago that a very blonde, very energetic, petite, beautiful young girl and her coach, wink, wink, and nudge, nudge, coach, came up to Natal to train for the Doozy Canoe Marathon. Fortunately for us, there was no water in the Doozy River, so they booked into a backpacker's lodge in Underberg so that they could train in our mountain streams. Fortuitously, my wife Anita saw them running and asked what they were up to. She was told about their training and then inquired whether our young son Craig could join them. And so began this beautiful relationship of coming to Natal, coming to the farm, coming to our Transkei cottage in order to train and prepare for many, many doozies. The twice-a-day training sessions on our dams and rivers, and oh dear Tombi, those mountains, those bloody mountains, running up those mountains with that booming voice echoing in the hills. Craig, Alexa, Alexa, do you want to win the dice or do you actually want to win the doozy? Effort, put more effort into it. I need more heart from the both of you. All Pete ever wanted was for you to do your best. But most importantly, he wanted you to display commitment and heart, big heart. Once we were down at our Transkei cottage, and these sessions were belting it out in our lagoon right next to our cottage, the Springbok rugby player, Wayne Fivey, was staying across the lagoon from us and watching this display. He sidled over to me and asked what the hell was going on. Who was this coach and who were these paddlers? And commented that he had never seen such passion and dedication coming from a coach. I suppose we can compare Pete to a modern day Rassie Erasmus. So how did Pete influence our lives and my family's lives? It was Pete who influenced and suggested some 24 years ago that a young junior, Craig Turton, my son, paddle with Loveday Zondi. Back then, a mixed race boat was totally unheard of. Can you imagine the hype and publicity that was generated in the press and on TV? There was no social media in those days, and those juniors came in the top 10. It was Pete who introduced, influenced, and suggested that a teenager, Craig Turton, paddle the non-stop doozy with the icon of paddling, Martin Dreyer. and they won in a record time. It was Pete who influenced and suggested that Craig paddle the doozy with Simon van Geysen on many occasions, and they won many gold medals. And it was Pete who influenced and suggested that Craig paddle another doozy with Jasper Mocker, and they too won another gold medal. It was during all this training, racing, and effort that Pete would influence and encourage his beautiful young blonde paddler to marry him. And it was my wife, Anita, who had the privilege of making her wedding dress and her flower girl's dress. Later on, when our eldest daughter, Beanie, was getting married, and we had decided as a family that we were going to stand up when asked who gives this woman to be married to this man, that our whole family would stand up all together. And Alexa stood by our side, as we all said we do. Simon van Geysen, who is absolutely shattered and broken that he's not here today, wrote to me and said the following: "It is so surreal to think that Pete is gone. He was such a mountain of a man. He was such an institution on the paddling scene, and I just thought that my boys would fall under his wing on the fly, just as I did as a kid. I am gutted, absolutely gutted." Pete touched so many lives. I think it would be fitting for us all to now to bow our heads and just take that moment of silence that we can reflect on what our legend Pete has meant to each of us. Please bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we gather here today with heavy hearts, grieving the loss of someone we all deeply love and respected. Thank you for the gift of Pete's life, and thank you for every moment that we shared, every lesson we ever learnt, and every memory we ever made. Although we feel sorrow in our loss, we also feel gratitude at having known Pete. Comfort us in this time of pain and wrap your arms around all of us who mourn, especially Alexa, Jared and Blake, Tombi, Cappy and Spuddy. Please bring peace to our troubled hearts. May peace rest in eternal life and love forever. Lord, our loss is your heaven's gain. Amen. I'm now going to ask that the family come up.
To my dad, you're the best dad.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Where's Holly? Where's Holly? Yeah. Halfway through, group. We read it together.
Okay. It's fine. It's fine. You were the best dad. I loved going to the beach with you.
You taught me all the tricks.
Once when we were going to the beach,
My dad was rushing us to get our stuff together and hurry up and get going.
but when we arrived at the beach, he looked in the boot and turned to us and said,
Did we pack my bag?
we laughed because he said,
we. And the next time we went to the beach, my mom told me to ask my dad,
did we pack?
did we pack Wee's bag? We all just laughed and laughed.
It's okay.
I'm going to miss our laughs together.
You can.
I want to share a story of a time when I went crayfishing with my dad. We left home at about 5 a.m., which was early for me, but asleep for Dad. He was rushing as usual, as if we concerned about making the crayfish wait. We drove through Fisher, stopped for some poached for the crayfish, and a muffin and hot chocolate for us. We then headed to Soetwater Reserve, better known as Crayfish Factory. Not an actual factory, but just a spot with lots of crayfish. The paddlers may know it as the start of the Cape Point Challenge. Part of the rush was to get out onto the boil at low tide. The shallow section of the reef where we lay the bait bags. It makes the dive down a bit easier, but it does mean that the waves are bigger. But because it was not Cape Point Challenge, Dad wasn't worried about the surf. Also, by this stage, he had already made sure I had spent lots of time getting bashed by waves. So we laid out about 10 bait bags spaced around the boil. I was always the dive test dummy, so I did the first dive, while Dad stayed on the boat to make sure it didn't get smoked by waves. For the next 2.5 hours, we traded shifts, diving and paddling in the 10-degree water. Once we had caught all the crayfish the quota allowed us to keep, and definitely not anymore, we headed in, navigating through the surf, making it back cold but happy. I always had taken it for granted that these days and other fishing missions were a very normal weekend activity that dads did with their sons. But I've learned from other kids that not every dad was willing to paddle 20 kilometers on a fishing ski mission just because their son was keen to catch a yellowtail in the trawling lanes of Cape Point. When I think about my dad, I always think about the effort, passion, and determination he put in for others, but also that he could not make a pair of flip-flops last more than a week. That's the thing about my dad. He wasn't about doing things perfectly, but he showed me that the value of putting in the effort. He was always up for a cool mission with me. Always seemed keen if I was keen, and would not take the easy route to get there. That's just who he was. He was a proper dad.
I wrote a speech. I thought about it. A million ways to say it, a million ways to put it on a paper. But nothing's ever going to do it justice. I'm talking about how he loved me, valued me, how we worked perfectly as a team, how he knew he didn't always have the answers, and he loved asking me my point of view, and it always felt like he listened. I can't ever get that across as how special I felt. But he was proud of me, and proud of what we'd managed to do together. The one thing in my speech that I will read, or stick to, is if I could have said goodbye, I would have told him thank you. Thank you for always believing in me. And thank you for not leaving me alone. I will never be able to fill the hole that he's left behind. But he has left me with the most amazing sense of love and support through the life that he led. I always felt that he gave so much, but now I know why. But most of all, I would like to say thank you for our kids. Thank you for being the dad that you were. If nothing else, I'm still the luckiest mom in the world. And we will be okay because of you.
Yo, respect, Lex. My name's Dave, and before I introduce the various speakers, I just thought that I would read a note from Admore. A lot of you will know who he is. He runs this place basically. Like Pete, he's someone who's got a presence about him, and he's the natural leader and a connector of people. I was shocked and heartbroken because Peter Cole, to me, was my inspiration. What he did for me and the community at large is amazing. He was the man who sees what I do at this club. He is the man of respect. He had visions, lots of visions, Cape Point Challenge and many more. It's a huge loss for all of us. My friend, rest in peace, Admore, FHBSC. Okay, I would like to introduce Barb's, Peter and Rory's sister. Barb's, I've watched how you've conducted yourself in the last week, quietly, nurturing, not looking to come to the front, but just like an absolute rock.
Hi everyone. Thanks everyone for coming and just celebrating Pete's life, his immense life. Family is where life begins and love never ends. For Pete, Rose and me, that love was woven deeply into the fabric of our childhood, especially during the holidays we spent together. Nature and the ocean anchored our experiences and laid the foundation for much of what we love and what Pete loved. During those early years, we were lucky enough to have Witklip and Plet as our playground, fishing, swimming, running down the dunes onto Robberg Island, body surfing on Robberg Beach, carefree and simple times. Our home has always been open to all our friends. Anyone was welcome. And as we grew older, that extended to Wednesday night dinners. If you know, you know. At the heart of creating this welcoming environment was my incredible mum, the backbone of our family, someone who provided her children with a strong moral compass and the absolute essence of being a good human. She built the foundations on which Pete, Rose, and I stood as we moved through life. I'm thankful that she had 3 dedicated days with Pete at Infanta just a few weeks ago. Pete was a dichotomy in so many ways. He could come across hard, but was actually very sensitive. He was a leader, but didn't love the limelight. He was complex, but simple, black and white in so many ways. He was kind, but challenging at times, often to those he cared for the most. But if anything, he was consistent. As he became a family man, I took delight in watching his absolute love and devotion to his family. Whether it was fishing with Jared or paddling with Spuddy, I will miss him sharing pictures with me of adventures with the kids. He was so proud of both of them, and I shared in that pride and will continue to. We had our weekly Monday morning meetings at the shop, which so often turned into a debrief of what was going on in his life. The kids, the squad, business. I relished those encounters and I will miss them immensely, but I'm so thankful for them. Grief does not exist without love. Why does it hurt so much? Because we loved him. My promise as we move forward and navigate this new world without Pete is to Lex, Jared, and Spuddy. You are Coles, and the Cole family bond runs deeper than you could ever imagine. We are here for you to love and support you every step of this new chapter, whatever that may look like. Lean on us for anything and everything. And lastly, to Pete, my brother, Peter, Peekaboo. I will miss your reticent but mighty one-arm bear hugs, wicked sense of humor, steady rudder when I needed advice, my emergency contact, popping myself every time I had a missed call from you, wondering what I'd done wrong now. The threads of our lives are deeply intertwined into the richest of tapestries. I'm proud to be your sister and thankful for the time we did have and the memories that will live on. Rest easy, Peeps. I will feel your presence in the winds that blow and look for you on the ocean swells, and I will find you there.
Thanks so much, Barbs. Jared and Spuddy, what you did was really tough, but you'll be so happy that you did it in time to come. And you are definitely your mum and dad's kids. This feels a little bit like one of Pete's training sessions. I remember the 2000s weren't my favorite, and there was a lot of laughter and also a hell of a lot of tears involved, but we got through it together. So now it's my privilege to introduce a really up-and-coming endurance athlete. He's showing a lot of potential with canoeing, a doozy in particular, and mountain biking and adventure racing. His name's Martin Dreyer.
Sorry, guys. Peekaboo, as Bob said, PB was what his mom called him. As schoolmates called him Pika. Pika because when Pika was involved in a conversation and he was concentrating or he did his homework, he would be like forward eyebrows, frowned, and those peaks really stuck out more than normal. And so he got the schoolboy term Pika. So when you hear me saying Pika, that's Pete. We both arrived at Woolwich College as termly boarders when he was from Cape Town, I was from Plett. And he was a small oak, like me. And Rory was actually even smaller. Can you believe it? Rory played scrum half. At school, Pete excelled and shot the lights out when it came to water events at swimming and water polo and life saving. One of his most memorable moments was winning the 4x50 meter relay and breaking the Eastern Province record with 3 other teammates, Buller Blackburn, Campfire Forster, and Peter Gerardo. Pete also played a nifty game of cricket. He was a fast-paced bowler and could swing the ball. He was, by matric he had grown, and he played 8-man and was quite renowned for coming around the scrum and booming anyone in his way. Our dormitory was called Carter House at Woodridge, and being a termly boarder, you spend a lot of time together. And I remember Carter House overlooks the Van Staden's Bridge in Van Staden's River Gorge, and Pete and some of his mates, Pip and Bino, decided to bunk out one afternoon and go across to the Van Staden's Bridge, making their way. And this bridge it's a huge bridge with a huge arch. And they proceeded down, scrambled down, and managed to get onto the arch, but that smooth concrete was too difficult to climb up. And so you had to go backwards because then your shoes had more traction. And you reversed themselves up, right up the arch into the middle of the bridge. We had a chuckle that night because the dorm master, the house master, said that he saw a strange phenomenon on the bridge this afternoon. His eyesight wasn't so good. He saw baboons scrambling over. And luckily for Pete, he didn't have binoculars and bad eyesight because that was sure have been 6 of the best. A good caning. And the chap who would have done that was the most feared Mr. Scott, who used to play for Ireland flank. So you can imagine, you avoided that at all costs. Pete, or being a terminally border, you'd miss school for anything. And Pete put his hand up for a fundraising cycle tour from Woodridge to Cape Town. That's over 800 kilometers, because you would get 5 days off school. But unbeknown to him, when he signed out on the dotted line, he actually had to paddle a cycle tandem with a blind person all the way. And so he left school 5 days before us, and we were envious as hell. And he made the 800 kilometers down to Cape Town. And that moment I actually realized that Pete had proper fussbait. The very day we finished matric, if we finished today, my dad came from Plet and collected us, and the very next day we were on our way to Infanta, to where Bob said they had a remote family beach shack. And my dad's car couldn't make it the last 7 kilometers, so we got kicked out and had to walk with our supplies. And straight after matric, the day after, we went to this little shack and lived for 2 weeks, scrounging off the coastline, fishing, and just having the best time. And thank goodness that Wendy and her Pete's mom, grandmother, came to collect us 2 weeks later, because we were becoming feral. Just underpants, eating fish, and scrounging around. We still thought it was the life. Yes. Then through at varsity at times, we always try to save bucks, and if our parents gave us bus money, like to go to visit each other's homes, we would keep that bus money and hitchhike. And so we did many hitchhiking trips from Cape Town to Plet. And I remember the one time we always made it in one day, but the one time we got stuck outside the Stillby turnoff because the car that gave us a lift turned off there, so we're stuck there. It was getting dark. And then the next car that came past us also turning down, so we just went into Stillby for the night. Had $4.50, and so we bought a beer, shared it, and ate all the peanuts on the bar counter, went from bowl to bowl, and that was dinner. Slept in the ditch outside and waited for the next car to go to Plet. For us, as a student money and earning, it was diving sinkers, which Pete has done with Jared and exposed him to that. Diving lead where the fishermen fished, and diving oysters. And we did 3 seasons of fishing commercially, catching calamari in the summer holidays, where Buller Blackburn was life-saving while we worked our hearts out. He was on the beach slaying the chicks. But with the diving lead, the one time when we decided to take the car, we stopped in Mossel Bay because we heard that the fishing off the point was very popular, so we thought that's a great place to get sinkers. And we dived off the point, and there was lead everywhere, and we had loaded up, and we had put the lead in a little gully, went back to the car, like had something to eat, brought back the car keys and put them in the little Standard Bank bag, and continued to dive. And later on in the day we came back, and the lead had been stolen by the fishermen with the car keys. And so we were stuck there, stranded. And they had a little bit of money to phone Wendy to please send keys on the Intercape bus, which arrived the next night. So that night we had to break into our car, as you could then in those days, move the door and get wire and lift that little locking lever. And so we managed to sleep in the car for the night. The commercial fishing was really good fun, launching off Plet and fishing. At Infanta, when we went there, just after school, when I had my license, I was 40 days older than Pete, from November, and he was in January the next year. Wendy's folk, or Wendy and John, allowed us to take the car because of my license, but Peter was desperate to drive. So of course we went around the corner on that Jeep track, and Peter pushed me out and he sat in the front seat. We hadn't gone 50 meters, and he was so flummoxed with the clutch pedal brake that we had gone completely off the road and were launched high and dry on a mound with the wheels spinning. We were supposed to go and catch fish to bring back for supper, but the time we got the car off, we just came back and said, sorry, the fish weren't biting. For me, one of my most memorable paddles was with Pete off a Miller's Run. I wasn't that experienced, but driving to Miller's, we got dropped off, and it was just the two of us. And while we were starting to paddle, as we were heading out around that rock that lines you up for Roman Rock, we heard this like boom in the distance, and Pete's like, oh, they're blasting at the quarry by Glen Ken there. There's a quarry, so he said they're blasting. So I was like, okay. We carried on. We started paddling. He would get a little bit ahead of me and then wait, and I'd catch up. And then after a few minutes, he'll be ahead of me, I'll catch up. But we kept hearing this boom, and I said to Pete, like, that boom is, like, surely when you blast, and then it's like they start taking all the stuff away. Anyway, we were suspicious, but we were together setting off again, and the next thing, we see this big plume of spray 200 meters in front of us explode into the air, bigger than a whale breaching, just this huge spray. And 3 seconds later, we hear the boom, and they were firing guns, doing naval practice from the harbor wall with those like 5-meter turrets. And all ships in the area had been evacuated because with radar they'd cleared, but these 2 surf ski paddlers, we had come under the radar and were right in their firing zone. And so when that shot was 200 meters in front of us and it went off, they picked us up in their binoculars from the harbor wall, and then stopped and sent the attack strike craft to come and fetch us. And they roughly manhandled us in, and we begged them to please put our surf skis in the boat as well, and they grudgingly did. Put the boats in the craft, took us to the harbor wall underneath the smoking guns, and then dumped us off. And Pete started arguing with the guy that he's messed up our line, he needs to take us further out into the sea. That's Pete. Yeah, Pete, I mean, was a standout paddler, and I mean, also one of his great results was winning the world, or going to the world champs, representing South Africa with David Marker. One paddler that I think had a very calming influence on Pete was Paul Murray. I think maybe because Paul sat in front, and with us, with me, Rose or Godzilla, and David, Pete always sat in front, and so I think that was maybe where the red mist always came down. I lived with Pete after varsity. We carried on living in a little house in Lakeside we called the Pink Palace. And it was basically, I mean, we were there for 10 years. I think it was, for me, it was the most radical training camp. It was just paddle, sleep, paddle, sleep. And we used to go for afternoon Sunday runs with the boys and end up always having pizza, because Paul Lang and Duncan Siegfried had a house at Peddlers. And so we always had this big group run, and we pulled into Paul and Duncan's spot for pizza and watching that 8 o'clock Mnet movie. There was nothing that you could put on pause, so it was always a date for the chaps. I was super excited for paddling with Pete in this upcoming World Champs, and we were quite motivated just to get in the boat again and kind of race the Bully section. But I was still getting WhatsApps after a race. I did the Scotland to Brighton, and I'll see a WhatsApp message like, I don't know how you got the results, but it'll be like, Mart, you're forgetting how to angle on the runs. And Lexa confessed to me a few days ago that Pete was actually quite concerned I wasn't training hard enough. So, I mean, I'm not even one of his kids, and he's still tuning me. Yeah, Jared, you did more with your dad than dads and lads do in a lifetime. Your dad has only underestimated you once, and that was just recently when you went up to SA Champs, and you won your under 16 K1, and then you had to paddle doubles, and Pete was like, he hasn't really done doubles, but he'll jump in with Cody. They haven't trained together, but he said to me, they probably won't do so well because they're underpowered. And lo and behold, you made the SA team under 18. And that's going to set you up to go to Hungary. That sets you up to go to Hungary in a few weeks. My WhatsApp is just overloaded from your dad's. Yes, he just sends me all those fishing pictures of you guys, the two of you. And I could never outdo him. I'd send something back and boy, he just doubled the amount of catch that you guys did. And Blake, how you blossomed into a Supergirl athlete. I remember at SA Champs 3 years ago where you were quite timid to even go and compete and you were on your dad's back body surfing. And I thought maybe it should be from Spud to Barnacle, your nickname, because you didn't leave your dad's side. And now this year at SAs, I don't think anyone has probably ever won as many events. And from the beach events, long run, to the swim, to the board, I mean, that's unusual. And your cross country is next level. That's for sure not a chip off the old block, because that's your own doing. I just want Jared and Blake, you guys must know that your dad was absolutely over the moon proud with what you guys achieved. There was never any doubt. Blake, so you and Pete go back so far. I mean, you're catching the train alone early mornings as a teenager, getting to Pete's training on the fly. I remember you and Nikki, how you guys used to train up a storm, and it was entertaining how you just got so good, you were just thrashing the boys. And as we would say, the boys were getting checked. And I mean, you're just going on to your World Champs medals. I mean, Pete was part of that at this next level. Pete admired your commitment, tenacity, your work ethic, your ability to push yourself beyond limits, your love for your children. Yeah, he loved you dearly for who you are. Yeah, Baker, you didn't see this coming, nor did we. But Pika, know that your presence was ginormous, and your influence far and wide. And that is where the magic now starts, with the process of healing. Because Pika, all the good that you sowed will now take root to hold and cradle and nurture your loving family. Pete, thank you for being part of my life for the last 42 years, and all those adventures we embarked on with innocent knowledge. You've been my wingman, my best mate, and I thank you for that. We'll miss you terribly. So.
Pete hated being hot. And one of my most enduring memories of Pete was at the beginning of a Cape Point challenge. It wasn't the short course, it was the one that started at Crayfish Factory. And I had a couple of friends who were staying with me from Durban. And as you know, a cold snap in Durban is when it's about 15 degrees. And it was quite a chilly morning at Cape Point, at Crayfish Factory. And my Durban friends were dressed looked like for the Antarctic. They had long sleeve shorts on, you know, those ballet rods, and maybe two hellies, one long, one short, and like a windbreaker. And they had those those puffers from K-Way, those black things, and beanies that smelt like mothballs. And every now and then one of them would put their toe in the sea and recoil in absolute abject terror as to how cold the the sea was, and that was something that was on their minds. And Peter Cole arrived. Like Marty said, he had that furrowed brow and a 1,000-mile stare. He'd worked harder than anyone else, and it was time to do battle. It wasn't a good time to engage in idle chit-chat with Pete. Could do that after the event was over. And he had these big shoulders and looking strong. And the thing I think that terrified my Durban friends was that he was in shorts and a vest, and he had a peak on. And when he went through the surf, he used to turn it backwards. And that's just such an enduring memory of Pete for me. And because he passed away so suddenly and so tragically, we'll always remember him as someone strong, determined, and going flat out. And I'll always remember him like that. We were a bunch of friends, we still are, who did PET's London together. It was a remarkable group of people. The one criticism that one must level at that group was the name of the group. It was something that was invented by Michael de Villiers, and the more I tried to prevent the name from sticking, the more it stuck. And I think it's appropriate for someone like me to talk about Pete, because if you have a look at our group, there's a Freedom Challenge winner, a Cape to Rio yacht race winner, SA Triathlon champ winner, PET's London winner, Cape Point Challenge winner, several people who represented South Africa at triathlon, and the list goes on. And then there was me. And if you come to Fishhook and you shake a tree, a world champion will fall out, or a South African champion or a Western Province champion. All of them, whether it's someone like David who competed against Pete or paddled in doubles with Pete, or the numerous people who were trained by Pete, all of them were influenced by him, and he created a culture, a strong culture here in Fishhook, along with the others. But he was the driving force. Our nickname for him was in our group was our spiritual leader, because first of all he was most certainly a leader. He commanded respect. He didn't try and force it, and we certainly did respect him. And spiritual because he represented what we stood for: friendship, hard work, and more important than anything else, having your feet on the ground and being humble. To me, one of the most amazing things about all the various athletes here who got to the very top is how friendly, unassuming, and humble they are. Not one of them is big-headed or boastful, and that certainly got a lot to do with Pete. But, and this is where I come into the story, Pete loved to see anyone exceed their expectations and follow their dreams. So, for instance, the last thing I ever thought I would be able to do was the PET's London. But Pete suggested and kept planting that seed, kept nagging me, and before I knew it, I crossed the finish line of my first PET's London, and no one was more chuffed than Pete. And there are so many people here who did things they never thought they would be able to do because of Pete, the average paddlers. And he loved seeing someone do their first Miller's Run or do their first Cape Point and just challenge themselves. He wasn't always an easy guy because he was passionate and he really wanted everyone who was in his space to do better than they ever expected. So we, you'll be glad to know there's only 2 more stories to go and then I'll time out. But 2 stories that I remember while I was thinking about what I wanted to say was we were busy with the toughest day of the PET East London. It's actually a day-night event, and it's the 5th day of the PET East London. So we'd finished prize giving. Tragically, again, I didn't win a prize. But I had a little medal, which I was very proud of. And we'd had our fines meeting, and then we started to tie the dog loose a little bit. And this Australian guy came up to me. They had been racing a relay race against the South Africans. Oscar, I think you were part of the South African side. Sorry that we didn't win that time, Oscar, but such is life. But anyway, they were a hell of a nice oaks. I was actually very surprised to see they could string a sentence together and eat with a knife and fork. But I'm joking, they were actually very, very nice guys. And this guy came to me and said, there's 2 things that I find remarkable about you guys. I said, yeah. And he said, the first is, I've paddled, we teased them that they'd done the half marathon. He said, I've paddled half what you guys have done, and much more than twice as quickly, because, you know, you guys had to spend the whole day out there. But it looks like you guys are Irish rugby and soccer supporters, and you've won the World Cup rugby and soccer simultaneously. What's going on with you guys? And I think I probably said something lame like, well, that's how we roll in Africa, or something like that. And I also said that, well, we've got like this bowl, the Sporty Anderson bowl. And when we finished paddling, we put all our spare juice that's still in our trippers into this bowl, all the Cytomax and Hammer and Coke and water. And then we add Cape to 10 Rand cane. And we put some straws in there, and whatever the cane takes out, the Cytomax puts back in. He was a bit confused, but he was still happy to chat to me. And I said, well, the second thing, what's that? He said, well, I can't, in Australia, the elite paddlers, they're in the VIP section. They stick to themselves, and all the fish and chips, the rats and mice, they stand to the other side. And I was under no illusion that he thought I was one of the elite oaks. And he said, what's that all about? And I said, you see that oak over there, Peter Cole? He's one of our best paddlers, along with Paul Murray. And he doesn't tolerate any big-headedness, any show-offy behavior. He's a humble, down-to-earth oak, and he doesn't want to be separate from us. So that's how we go about things. And we had a tradition with our group. It started with a great friend of ours, Keith Anderson, who, as it so happens, passed away just over 20 years ago. And Keith was a formidable athlete, both on and off the water or on and off the bike. And Keith and Pete never left the beach until the last of our group finished. And from time to time, that was me. And it was just such a feeling of community, everyone trying their best, Pete providing the example for us to follow, and Pete being so happy that people got in, and then after that it was time to laugh and chat and do our war stories. Then the second story is about the toughest, most determined, hardest paddler in our group, called Wendren Setzer. Wendren, like me, never ever thought she would do the PET East London. But Pete planted the seed in her head and started cajoling her and getting onto the fly. And before she knew it, Wendren was on the beach about to start day 4 of the PET East London. And I think, Wendren, you were the first or second lady to ever do the PET East London in a single. And there was one drama. Wendren had gone blind. I think the sun, staring into the sun for 3 days had an effect. So this is how we rolled. First of all, Pete went to her, put his hand around her arm, around her shoulder, and said to her, "You're going to do this." Then Keith Anderson, who I think won that year, took his sunglasses off, gave them to Wendren. There you are. And then the kindest man in the world, Dominic Strano. He's also the best dressed man in the world. His nickname is Shepherd, because he's always nurturing and looking after everyone. Dominic went every every paddle, every centimetre of the way until we all finished in East London. And that behaviour is thanks to Peter Cole. So there's 2 more things, not very long. First of all, Murray Williams did a lovely tribute to Pete, and he said he had this image of Pete paddling into the sunset with this huge diamond behind him of his family and friends and all the people that he had such a profound effect on, and who gained immeasurably from his help and his influence. And then Eri, my daughter, and I were driving to school, and we were listening to one of my favorite tunes. I don't think it's one of Erin's favorites, but she knew that I'd lost Pete, so she didn't turn the volume down. And the chorus goes like this: "If I was a tree, you'd be the gentle breeze, and we'd sway with the morning birds and watch the sunrise in the east, completely free." Thank you. Sorry, it's now an absolute... Just one more. It's an absolute honor and privilege to introduce Auntie P. He's a godfather of our kids, just an all-round good oak and one of Pete's best mates.
There's 2 things. Unfortunately, I missed the meeting of the speech makers, and I did see on the WhatsApp group that I was down to speak about varsity days and paddling. However, no, I can speak like this is fine. Please allow me to digress. I think my relationship with Pete goes much deeper than varsity days and paddling. I would rather talk about Pete's incredible friendship and his unbelievable character. Before I start, just a few thank yous from my side. Firstly, to Tex, you have been an absolute rock. Thank you for all you've done, all the admin you've done. Thanks for looking after our beautiful special Alexa. Then to my darling wife, who's been asking me every half an hour if I'm really okay. I know I always say I am, but right now I'm probably not. To the young gents and ladies who were on the scene last Thursday night, Dom Norton, Johnny Lucas, and Heath Clark. Thanks for all you guys did that night. I really hope that one day you guys find peace and solace. To whatever Holly and Riley Smith did that day, and for later that evening, Cozzy and Mickey and Craig Flanagan just popping in to be there. I think the conversations that Cozzy and Mickey and I had that night may have led to the thing that happened next. I obviously could not sleep that next morning, and I was lying awake at 3:30 in my bed. Now normally 3:30, Peter Cole, the old Peter Cole before Lex, would have woken up, gone to the engine garage, bought a burger, had a Coke, read the sports section and the mini crossword. However, I was lying there doom scrolling, going through all the reels and everything, and a scene popped up where Queen Elizabeth II is interviewing Maggie Thatcher, and Maggie Thatcher has just fired a whole lot of cabinet ministers because they were privileged and they lacked grit. That sounds like something Pete Cole would have done. The Queen then asked Maggie Thatcher, was she not scared to make enemies? And Maggie Thatcher just recited this poem to her. It's by Charles Mackay, and it's called You Have No Enemies. You have no enemies, you say. Alas, my friend, the boast is poor. He who has mingled in the fray of duty that the brave endure must have made foes. If you have none, small is the work that you have done. You have hit no traitor on the hip. You have dashed no cup from purged lip. You never turned the wrong to right. You have been a coward in the fight. The poem emphasizes the idea that a life without enemies is a life without strong principles or meaningful convictions. Pete always stood up for what he believed was right. I'm not saying he was always right, but for what he believed to be right. That was Pete. He was raw. He was unfiltered. He made stands. We must pay tribute to John and Wendy, for it was Pete's character and values that made him stand out as a giant. They say you cannot make new old friends. Pete was one of my oldest friends. I've known him since junior school. My earliest memories of Pete involved our tit-for-tat races in the under 11 100-meter backstroke at the national age group galas at Newlands on a Friday night. But for Pete and I, it wasn't about who won. It was about that burger at the Golden Spur afterwards. I always say that you cannot put on a facade in front of an old friend because they know you for what you are. Pete and I knew each other for the idiots that we could be. Pete has been an unbelievable friend and a cheerleader of me and my family. He was selfless and he was generous. He would do things for you because it would make you happy, and he wanted absolutely nothing in return. I have fond memories of early Clanwilliam mornings. Before everyone else would wake up, Pete would make Janine and I coffee with about half a cup of condensed milk in, and he'd sit there and shoot the breeze, and he'd just say, "Ant, come, let me take you skiing. I know you got ants in your pants." Now, Pete actually hated skiing, and that may have been my fault. I was teaching Pete to ski on Teerwater's Kloof, and he was sitting in his two skis, and he was trying to get up for the first time, and his legs splayed open like this. And as Pete does, Pete did not let go. Pete ripped his whole hamstring all the way off. So I think I put paid to Pete's whole marathon career, and he never forgave me for that. Maybe he was trying to get me back. Pete stands tall as a coach and a mentor, not only to top international athletes, but to the old salty diehards, the weekend warriors, and the lighties with huge hopes and ambitions. Some coaches in your life stand apart from others. There are some that are very good at teaching a sport and training you for a sport. But there are others that go much, much further. These are the ones that teach you character and life lessons. Pete was one of those. With Pete, it was not about a specific training session or a training block you were training for something. It was the journey. It was the journey that you took with him. It was never an easy journey, but it was not meant to be. It was the hard parts that forged you for later. Pete also loved the Skinner and a tease, and poor Bobs is often the victim of the tease. We also shared the same warped sense of humor. We find humor and glee in other people's misfortune. In 1998, Janine and I just started paddling. We'd actually I think we were going through the courting phase of our relationship. For those youngsters, courting is like exclusive vibing with benefits. As I said, we had just started paddling. Janine was fresh from Bloemfontein and not a huge fan of the sea. Pete convinced us that the first race we must do is Hart Bay to Camps Bay. So you paddlers know that the section from Seal Island around the Sentinel can get woes. And that day it was woes. There the two of us were standing on the beach in our brand new double hammerhead ski, matching neoprene pants, thinking we were the bomb. So we set off and everything went swimmingly until we got to Seal Island. And then it really went swimmingly. I think we had swum like 10 times by the time we got to Llandudno. And Pete thought this was the funniest thing. He had so much joy in our misfortune. It was just the way he's, yeah. You can never take yourself too seriously around Pete, because he'll bring you down so quickly with a laugh, his humor, and a chirp. Janine, want to stand a bit closer? About 10 years ago, Janine decided she wanted to swim the English Channel, and she was adamant that she wanted Pete as her second. They share the same mindset with regard to preparation and performance strategies. As David can confirm, being a second for a long-distance swim is not an easy task. However, being a second for a pedantic, stubborn swimmer is even harder. So Pete committed to joining her and seconding her, and he even swam almost half the way with her in the channel. On Friday night, I was traveling, and I messaged Janine to say that I was battling to get started with the speech, and if she had any specific memories from that day that she wanted to share. She sent me a message that caused me to well up, and I messaged her back straight away and said, there is no way, absolutely no way, I could have the courage to read a last paragraph out. She kindly has offered to assist.
I will always think back on this time with such gratefulness to Lex for so graciously loaning me her beloved Pete. I remember the early mornings before the swim where Pete would wake me up early and we'd have to do our pedantic planning, packing, sorting, talking up early in the morning so we didn't irritate Ant. I remember that because I think that's why I love Pete most, for how he understood my anti-PE and how they love and respected. It was so mutual, and how in 50 years they never had a fight. On a more humorous side, I remember a classic Pete tantrum when my other super second, Dave, got overly excited, sidetracked, lost focus, and didn't follow Pete's pedantic instructions and threw me a completely empty feeding bottle. The tantrum that ensued and the lashing that Dave endured, he's probably never recovered from. I swam away giggling, hungry and thirsty. Yeah. But most of all, I remember feeling so protected and safe with him swimming next to me stroke for stroke. His calm, strong strength and presence just holding me, keeping me safe and reminding me it will all be okay. He was just our Pete by my side, and he was just everything we all needed that day.
Okay, I think two of the most remarkable examples of Pete's ability to make someone reach heights they never thought they could was Sean and Kenny Russ. And I'd like to ask Kenny to come and say a couple of words. Sorry.
I first met Pete when I was about 9 years old. I remember the day vividly. Alexa was our guppy coach and Pete was there helping out. That day, they decided on an intense guppy portage session. You might think that was the start of my paddling journey, but you're horribly wrong. Portage scared me off for about 4 or 5 years after that, until Sean got me hooked on surf ski paddling. I was determined that I wanted to do the Cape Point Challenge in a single. With Sean's encouragement, I spoke to Pete. He never once said no. Instead, with his stern voice, he said, "See you on Monday. On the water, 5:45. Don't be late." And then he added, "You're going to need to do running time trials every Wednesday." This was before the days of the Orca squad, and Pete was only just beginning to properly take on the Orca squad. I'd like to think he saw a diamond in the rough, but perhaps he may have just lost a bet. Fast forward to that Monday morning in mid-September. I got lost paddling across the main flay in the dark, trying to find my way to the Marina Canals where he started our watches. Unfortunately, I ended up paddling through one of the bridges in the opposite direction. The abuse came echoing out of the darkness. "What the hell are you doing, Junior?" And in the background, the all-familiar scream. "On the water at 5:45 or don't come back." Little did he know, I was on the water at 5:45. I was just far too slow. Then came the dreaded Wednesday time trials. Because I was at life-saving duty, I thought I'd found this awesome loophole. Boy, was I wrong. 5:30, Pete rocked up at the life-saving club in his white Nissan hardbody. "Kenny, get out the water, get your running kit." I didn't have a running kit. I just had my wet paddling pants and rash guard. This didn't fuss Pete. He said, "Get in the back of the bucky, we're going." 36 minutes later, some bruised feet, very chafed body parts. This 95-kilogram 15-year-old realized he wasn't winning this battle. But what I didn't realize at that point was that this wasn't a battle. It was one of Pete's greatest strengths. His ability to find diamonds in the rough. It wasn't just the ability to find any diamond. He could turn anyone into anything, and a very big diamond. He did this by holding you accountable to the goals that you set with him. If you promised 100%, he gave you 1,000%. Pete, without hesitation, and for no other reason than to help bring you and the best out of you, he consistently taught discipline, and discipline filled the gaps when motivation ran low. When you search for the meaning of a trainer, it usually describes someone who trains people or animals. And to some extent, that's very applicable for Pete. He must have felt like herding kittens on the daily. But if you look up the word coach, you begin to understand Pete's role in many of our lives. It says, coaches focus on helping individuals develop their potential, set goals, and achieve personal growth. They facilitate a process of self-discovery and problem solving. They use tools like active listening and encouragement, tools many of us experience firsthand from Pete. Whether during a race or when trying to convince him, active listening, that we weren't actually at Karaoke Wednesdays and had actually overslept for 2000s. As you may guess, this was not true. During those cuck-out sessions, or otherwise encouragement, we honed our self-discovery and problem-solving skills as to how we would get back into Pete's good books. Blaming Ashley was often a technique that worked well. Through countless early mornings on the swamp with the Orca squad, long paddles, and hours chatting in the car driving to races, Pete helped shape me into the person that I am today, and I know many of us feel the same way. He had the rare ability to tell you what you needed to hear, not just what you wanted to hear. No goal was too big, and he knew exactly how to lift you up, dust you off, and kick you back on your way. You could go to him at any hour, especially before 5 a.m., for advice, help, or even just a friend to talk to. Pete was so much more than just a coach. He was a role model, a mentor, and a friend. He had many colorful relationships with us, and he grew up, and as people grew up and tried to discover themselves. At times his words felt harsh, but he always fought for what he felt was right, and what ultimately ended up being the best for us. He gave so much of himself, and instilled values and passions that I hope I can pass along one day. Pete, thank you for everything you've taught me, the moments, the memories we shared. But most importantly, thank you for sharing the incredible person that you were with us. We're going to miss our biggest supporter. We're going to miss you, my biggest supporter. Rest easy, coach. Now I know I can never lie about my 2,000 times.
Thanks, Kenny. What impresses me the most about you aren't your World Championship medals, but your character. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the proceedings. I'd like to introduce Pete's brother and his friend. I've got a very strong memory of when Billy Harker started the surf ski series and the two Cole brothers duking it out in the ocean. And then also another thing I didn't realize about Roars is that him and Martin both won the non-stop doozy together. Roars 3 times. I was a bit confused because I thought it's a one-stop doozy because you can stop going after you go over the finish line, but I digress. Roars.
Jared, I'm glad you've inherited your father's wicked sense of humor. It's good to hear. I think a testament to Pete's incredible life and who he was as a human being is reflected by the amount of quality people standing around here. I actually went for a walk on the catwalk this morning to try and get my head right, and it all fell apart when I saw all of you walking in. It was very moving, and thanks everybody for making the effort to come through. We've all lost someone very special this week. A son, a husband, father, brother, friend, and for many of you guys, a coach and a mentor. Pete, Barbs and I grew up in a very sporty family, passed down by my mom and especially my dad's passion for sport. Most of the time, Pete and I had a healthy competitive relationship. And although sometimes our friendly tennis matches at the Malherbers next door to us got a bit heated, we always left it on the court, and we were very careful not to let it affect our relationship. Most of our afternoons at Weinberg Junior School were spent on the cricket and rugby fields, and then squad swimming training in the evening. And when we weren't playing sport, we were running around our grandfather's farm in Constantia with our homemade bow and arrows and catties, causing havoc. It was a great place to grow up. I remember the one day we decided to hide in the pine trees above Croft Road, and armed with our catties and stash of Australian berries, we proceeded to pelt the cars driving past below. I lost interest after a while, obviously way before Pete, as he was way more committed to the cause. As I was climbing down the tree, Pete nailed this jag in the middle of the windscreen. And as the gentleman turned his jag into Bruce Road, he spotted who he thought was the guilty sniper descending from the trees. Obviously, I got marched off to my mom, and but I was professing my innocence. But I couldn't break the bro code and split on Pete still up in the trees. But to Pete's credit, that afternoon he went to my mom, and he actually admitted to my mom that it was him and not I that had shot the guy's jag. Anyway, our high school days were split between Wynberg and boarding school at Woodridge, where Pete excelled and discovered the love for surf lifesaving and canoeing. I found boarding school very tough at first, but having a big brother there by my side was a real support and comfort to me, and I don't think I would have got through it without him. Pete always had a very direct approach to everything. He did it in life. And anything he felt passionate about was done at 100% commitment. I used to love watching him play rugby for the first team at Woodridge. He had this Dwayne Vermeulen type approach to the game. No sidestep, straight and hard, like he handled most things in life. One of the most special times together was our time at Fishhook Lifesaving Club. In the mid-90s, we served on the committee together as club captain and chairman. And under Pete's leadership, the club grew into a major force in South African lifesaving. And most of the success achieved today was due to Pete's drive, commitment, and inspirational leadership. I always remember our weekly club training sessions in Clovelly Corner, which were brutal but fun. And they played a major role in making it an extremely tight unit. Pete has had a deep impact in so many people's lives, especially his beloved Orca training squad. His coaching style was unique, and if you weren't fully committed, it wasn't the place for you. He had a fun side as well, and training, although tough, always had a lighter, banter-driven side to it, which if you weren't part of, you wouldn't see. He had a nickname for virtually everyone in the squad. And it was a family more than a training squad. I'm actually not sure how many world champions are born out of the squad, but it's actually quite remarkable. You could say Pete was the Rassie of paddling. I like to think of Rassie as the Pete of rugby. So in closing, I'd like you all to charge your glasses when you get a chance and celebrate Pete's life with us today. Thank you again for all making the effort to come out.
Okay, thanks everyone. Could everyone we haven't got charged glasses, but could everyone please stand? Thank you. The hamburgers for everyone inside, and I think the odd liquid refreshment as well. Far better is it to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, than to rank with those poor souls who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, for they live in the grey twilight, where there's neither victory nor defeat. Could everyone just give Peter Cole a round of applause?